Hey everybody, this is Andy Melbuff, and in this video we're going to take a look at using the sketch component in Desmos Activity Builder. We're going to look at how to use the component just on its own, and we're also going to look at how to put some computation layer in the background to spice up some of the things that we can do with this. So to begin with, we're taking a look at an activity builder lesson that's already been prepped already. And I want to start out very simple with the sketch component and what we can do with that. So what you're looking at here is an example of a slide where students would be asked to identify parts of graphs. So this part that I'm hovering over right here is what we call a sketch or a sketch pad. I actually have two of them on this page, two different graphs here. Now, what the student can do is they have a pencil tool right here. I'm hovering over that. They also have the availability of a line tool. They have a text tool, and they have a math input tool as well. And then last here in this list is the eraser. They have different fonts available, different colors, different thicknesses, and they can undo and redo. So let me just kind of run through what this might look like. So a teacher might ask students to identify parts of graph based on the colors they use. So on this first graph, I want to circle y-intercepts in blue. Well, I'm already in blue. And if I want to have a thin line right here, this is what this might look like. So there's circling in blue. And if I come down here to this parabola, I'm circling the y-intercepts in blue. And we also want the students to circle x-intercepts in green. So I'm going to change to green. I might make this a little bit thicker. So in this top graph, we might ask the students to do some identifying here. In the bottom graph, we have two of them. Now, you'll notice in the bottom one, I make this mistake all the time. I did not change the color to green in the second component. So I undid that, and I'm just going to go into here and do it again. So changing something in one component doesn't necessarily change it in the other. So how do we go ahead and build this? Let's take a look at how we can put some things in play with this sketch pad. So I'm going to edit preview mode here, and I'm going to take you into a blank slide. And over on the left-hand side are the list of my available components. I'm going to choose the sketch. And once I choose the sketch, I can choose other components, or I can leave it as a full page item. In my background, I can have a blank background, which is what you see. I can have an editable graph. In other words, let me choose that. This looks like a regular Desmos graph, or I can choose to upload some image here. So I'm going to keep it blank for right now. And if I just leave this as is without doing anything else to it, here's what the students see. Here's their pencil tool, their line tool, their text tool, their math input tool, their eraser. So basically it's a drawing board. It's a whiteboard for the students, if you will. And depending upon what they choose, this is what they can do with that. So it can be as simple as that, or it can be a little bit more sophisticated. So let me show you a couple of other examples and uses for this sketch pad. So here's an example of using a sketch pad or a sketch component to show student work. Okay, we have an equation here, a linear equation. We're asking students to solve for y, to change it into a different format, showing work on the sketch. This is the part I like right here. We can ask students to show their work. Well, if students are using touchscreen devices, they can go ahead and use this pencil, and they can do all their work over here. Now, I'm using a mouse. Look how brutal this looks. So that's horrible. So I'm going to go ahead and just clear out what I wrote in there. If I don't have a touchscreen available, what I might want to do is use this math input. And I can type in a series of boxes. And this does a nice job with my math input. I can start out with 3x minus 4y equals 12. Now, unfortunately, I can't hit enter and go down a new line. I just have to put a new math box in. So a first step for students might be to subtract 3x from both sides. Et cetera, et cetera. So you can kind of see how the process would look there. I might divide everything by -4. So I can use fractions in here. So I'm not going to go ahead and finish this. I think the teacher can kind of get a gist for what's going on. The student can then drag this around. So, as they're creating their work here, they can create a semblance of order. What you're looking for is them to show you their understanding. Okay, and so the sketch tool here, the sketch component, allows that type of interaction. The next example of using a sketch component might be to show work, but with a background diagram. So here's an example of a number line, and I chose one with colored positive and colored negative differently, so that we can ask students to show how they might add the following expressions. So we might want them to, I don't know if teachers are going to want to use arrows, or we're going to start at, let's see, and I want to make sure the color, I don't want to use blue since I already have blue on my number line. So I might want this to be a green. So if I choose green, medium thickness there, I might start at -3 with a point, and then I want to add 4 to it. So I want to go with an arrow 4 to the right here. And then I want to add -5 to that. So I'm going to go left from here, 5. But we can use this to have students show their understanding of things. And so what we're looking for the students to do is add those expressions together, and we end up with a result of -4, and they can go over here to this math input box, and they can type in -4, and they can press submit, okay, and they can send that in to the teacher. Now, as a teacher, we're also used to seeing dashboard previews with mathematical input here. Well, this just shows a dot, and I want to show you in the background what's going on with that. This input does have a correct check in here, and that's in other videos that I've put together. So why isn't it working? Well, the sketch component looks for students to do something with it, and it's looking to grade it. If it's not possible to grade it, then I want to put the read-only sync in here. Read-only set to true is telling Activity Builder, don't evaluate the sketch component for correctness. Only evaluate what's over here in the input. And now if we see preview again, and the student does whatever they're going to do over here, and then they type in the response of -4, you'll see the teacher dashboard summary change right there. So we can also take a look at using the sketch component to show work geometrically, and using a sketch tool to draw a cube with a different background here again. So that's a couple in a row where I've shown you some different backgrounds, and I'll take you behind the scenes and show you how to upload those backgrounds. So we can ask students to draw on maybe an isometric line background, and maybe I want to choose a different color here, and maybe I want to be a little thinner, and we can ask students to draw cubes. And actually, if I'm going to draw a cube, I don't want to use the pencil tool. I want to use the line segment tool. So we can ask students to do stuff like this. And it gives us a little bit more perspective as we look at the drawing. So I'm not even going to finish doing that. I just wanted to preview that. Let me exit preview mode here. And when this goes in, this component, we have to choose a background. And that's going to be a custom image. So basically what I did is I went out on the internet, I searched isometric lines, found, copied, and saved an image, and then I uploaded it right here at this particular point. So you can see right here, that's the one I uploaded, isometric lines. It's just saved as an image. This next use of the sketch component is pretty cool, I think, I found this on the internet, and I want to give credit to Shirley McDonald. Basically, I copied her activity when I saw the cool thing she did with this this chooser option right here. What you're looking at are different backgrounds that the student can choose to draw on here. So what I'm hovering over right here is a standard sketch component, and this is a multiple choice component. And the 3 choices are Cartesian dot, isometric lines, and isometric dots. Okay, and I thought this was pretty cool, so I wanted to put it in the video. So again, the student can, depending upon which option they choose to work with, they have different backgrounds. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. I'm going to exit right here, preview mode, and I've gone to the next screen, and I've already copied this or duplicated it, but I took the computation layer out so we can build this together. So what we're going to do first is I want to make sure that my multiple choice component is named right here. So this one I've just called MC. Feel free to name it whatever you want. And then I'm going to have my choices for backgrounds here. Okay, it doesn't matter which order they're in. But below that multiple choice component, then I'm going to have 3 different sketch components. One of them I've labeled Cartesian dot, the other one isometric lines, the third one isometric dot. Those are 3 different backgrounds, and each of those backgrounds gets loaded. And again, this is basically something I copied from Shirley, so I didn't go about trying to reproduce this myself, but I thought it was pretty cool to put in here. And so what I want to do is tie each of these backgrounds into the choice. So to do that, basically what I'm going to do is hide each background unless it's chosen. So I'm going to go into the Cartesian dot one first, and we're going to use the hidden sink. Now, the hidden sink says we're going to base this on a choice. So here's what I want to focus on first. MC is my component for choosing. And so what this is saying is when the component MC, we're selecting option number 1. When that doesn't happen, we're going to hide this component. So when option number 1 is not chosen, this background is going to be hidden. And basically, I want to do that for the other 2 as well and make a minor adjustment. So for the second background, I'm going to copy and paste, and I want this hidden unless option number 2 is chosen. And lastly, same thing here. I want this background hidden unless option number 3 is chosen. So really, that's all we need to do. Make sure you name this and then choose to hide each of these unless it's chosen. So let's take a peek. Awesome, right there. So let's move on to our next example here. And we can use the sketch component to graph equations that, and I have in here parentheses, easy to replicate, okay? And then we can check their work with a little computation layer. So if we want the students to graph y equals negative 2x plus 4, we might want them to put a point at the y-intercept here, and we might want them to go rise over run to get this type of look. And again, we can change color if we want. We might want students, look at how horrible that looks. That's fine for right now. We give them a check my work button. And when we press that, we get the actual graph to come out, and students can make some interpretive feedback. How close are we? Even though they were a little shaky with sketching this, did they have the right idea? So how do we go ahead and build that? That takes a little bit of computation layer. So I'm going to exit here, and I'm going to go into the next screen, and I basically replicated the 3 parts to this. I have a sketch, I have a note, and I have a button. The button I'm naming as button, and I'm giving it a label. I'm going to move this out of the way. My label is check my work. So that's all I'm doing with the button. Then I want to tell my graph component what I want to graph. Well, I want it to graph y equals negative 2x plus 4. So I click graph, and I just simply type that in. But it shows up right away. I want to tie this graph showing up into the action button that I added also. So what we do is we add a restriction, a domain restriction, so that x is going to be less than, and I use t for time, and I use a capital T. Now, let me just show you briefly how this timer concept works. As t gets bigger, you can see the graph moving. As t gets smaller, less and less of the graph shows. Well, I don't want this to show unless the student has submitted. So I'm going to tie this t value into the computation layer. So I'm going to get rid of it right here, and I also want to back it up left, so I want it smaller. So I'm going to do, let's see, probably minus 10 here. And we'll come back and revisit this in a minute because I want to show you some things about speed. Now, Desmos can't graph this right now because t is not defined. I'm going to define it in the computation layer. And I'm going to define it as a number. Number is a sync. I'm going to type in the capital T. And I want that sync to draw from what component? Well, the component is the button. Once the button is pressed, it starts a timer. It'll run for 10 seconds. So now I have a timer that's going to run for 10 seconds. Let's watch what happens. And I'm going to click preview. And here's the student's work. And then we click check my work. Nothing's happening. That's weird. Oh, there it is. So it's running too slow. That's way too slow, and it peters out here. So we need to make some adjustments. So I'm going to exit preview mode here. Here's the adjustment that works just great with that. To speed it up, I add a coefficient in front of the T. That basically means each second is going to be 5 times faster than what you just saw. So let's see how this one looks if I put in that coefficient of 5, press preview, student graphs, and let's click check my work and activate that button. Okay, we're pretty close there, and that's a pretty good representation. So I would encourage you, if you want to get more into use of these timers, I have another video or two out there that goes into depth more on using action buttons as timers, but that's how we can also tie in with the sketch component. Now, in a similar fashion, we can be a little more complicated here, and we can do some more advanced equation work, checking equations. So we might want students to graph the equation of a circle with this equation, and using the pencil tool, there's going to be a center point at 1, -3, so the student might put a point there. Recognize that the radius is 3, so we can move 3 horizontally, vertically in either direction. Let's see how accurate I can be with this. I missed that one. And then we could ask students to sketch. Oh, this feels horrible. I feel like I'm so challenged right now. So there might be a sketch of a circle tying into the action button. We can get Activity Builder to graph it as well. So the student can, again, make some interpretive feedback or interpret some of that feedback right there. So how do we build that? To save time, we're not going to go ahead and build that. I just want to show you the background here. I've got an action button named. I've got my note, nothing going on. And in my component here, here's the equation I want graphed. But the key part is I want a domain restriction. And so that will be activating a timer T, just like we did previously. And here's that number T defined in the computation layer. Okay, moving on to screen 11, preview. Oops, we already were just there. Now we can also see how to use a full screen sketch component and copy the student's work to the next slide. So let me pick a different color here, and maybe we ask students to graph a sine wave with some certain properties. I don't know, something like that. Well, what we can do is tie this in right here to what they see on the next screen. Look. Now, clearly I did give directions. Let me erase this or just start over. We want students to sketch the graph of y equals -2x plus 1. So maybe they might do this. Now I'm going to sketch it incorrectly. And if the student does this and goes to the next screen, they'll see their graph, they'll see the actual correct graph, and hopefully can make some connections. So this is another way to use some interpretive feedback, and this uses one screen to the next. So I want to show you a little bit on the background there. Looking at in the background here, I've got my sketch component, and I've labeled it or identified it. I just typed in sketch. I change numbers and so forth every once in a while. And on the next screen, I have another graph here, and this is where the background from the previous one's going to come in. So up here in the computation layer, I'm just going to show you what I have. One of the syncs available for a graph or a sketch is a background sync. So there's the background sync. And this is one of the sources. We're going to take sketch layer, and we just type in sketch.sketch. I know that looks a little strange, but this first sketch is the component, and we're going to choose sketch out of it. So typically with these, I just do a lot of copy and paste. And what's happening here is we're going to also take the bounds from the previous graph. Now, let me show you going back. If I rename this sketch 8, I have to come here in my follow-up screen and notice I need the component's name here to change to sketch 8, and then I'm in good shape. Same with this one, sketch 8, and the warning symbol goes away. So basically this information here, this background, this bounds, are taking the background and bounds of the previous screen and dragging it over. So that's a little bit about how to use the sketch component in Desmos Activity Builder. Thank you.